What's going on, family? What's going on? What's going on, people? It's your boy Tony Guns, back at y'all, Bandos TV or Black Ops Bando TV. We're building leaders and creating kings operation is the order of business today and every day. I want to speak to y'all directly on something that's ultimately the purpose of this very video log that I do on a daily. And that's the detriment, or the order of business is the detriment of our boys. Our boys meaning our young black men, our young boys in our communities. Now it far stretches just our communities. I truly and honestly believe that it's been something that's being promoted in society today across the board for young men in general. But again, like I said, today I'm speaking. If it resonates, it resonates with other communities. But I'm speaking to my community right now because I can only speak from my experiences. Where I lived, how I've lived, and what I see. With that being said, I want to get straight to it. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. And I want to touch on 12 PowerPoints and write a passage for our boys. So the bottom line up front, number one, I put teach him to use his voice. Oftentimes, as we grow up as young men, we're taught to quiet down. Your voice carries. Quiet down, quiet down. Don't speak so loud. When it's almost seemingly the opposite for our young ladies. Our young ladies are constantly taught on a regular basis to project their voice. Never allow their voice to just be put to the side. Always make sure you utilize your voice. Don't allow somebody to speak over you. Don't allow somebody to shut you down. We teach our young women, our young ladies that, our little girls that. And then they have an example of that oftentimes in our families, which we know our families is what cultivates culture, is what creates culture. And if the example is always louder women, and this isn't a shot at this isn't a shot at my black women by any stretch of the imagination. Our women, y'all are boisterous. And our young ladies are taught to be the same way. And I wouldn't challenge you all to be any different unless the situation requires for you to do so. And that requires for you to have a strong male in your life, whether it's a father figure, brother, husband, boyfriend, whatever you want to call it. That requires a strong man that allows you to be able to do so. But that's the topic of another conversation. Number two, develop healthy emotions. Our young men need to develop healthy emotions. And before I continue with that, I want to say I'm speaking directly to and for our young boys. But in the same sense, these 12 PowerPoints are for kids in general. These are lessons and PowerPoints that can be used for kids in general, both male and female. But again, we're building leaders and creating kings, so I'm speaking directly to that. And I was saying, develop healthy emotions. What I mean by that is, I truly and honestly believe that in today's society, things are changing. In our communities, things aren't changing. When we were growing up, you heard too often that I didn't have a father to raise me. My father didn't raise me. My father wasn't in my life. You heard that a lot growing up. In today's society, I see that changing. So I want to, give a good shout out and kudos to my fellas. I see y'all. I see y'all when I'm picking up and dropping off my kids to school. I see y'all and showing up to different sporting events. And I see y'all at the daddy and daughter dances. And I see y'all in the community, so I see y'all. So I don't really feel like we fit into that narrative. Do we still have some work to do? Absolutely. But I say all that to say, in terms of developing healthy emotions, a lot of us are damaged. In general, we have sensitive emotion. We're overly emotional. It's not to say that we're not going to get emotional, but we didn't have a large example of how to handle, as men or boys, how to handle emotions. So oftentimes our emotions was the same as our siblings, our sisters, mothers, aunts, grandmothers, and things of that nature. And again, this isn't about shots. This is a simple observation. We have to teach our young men that it's okay to have those emotions. You know, you punch him in his chest or tell him that he shouldn't cry. Then he hide behind those masks that he start to put up, or those walls that he start to put up, because he don't want to seem vulnerable. It's nothing wrong. Teach him one. It's nothing wrong with those tears, but you better understand what you're crying for, because you will not be allowed to just cry for no reason. And then furthermore, outside of just crying, you won't be allowed to just cry without coming up with some sort of solution or fix for whatever you think that problem is. That's how you create or cultivate healthy emotions. Teaching them how to deal with it. Teaching them when, where, and why to deal with it. We'll talk about that and a little more extensively in another segment. I got 12 to hit, so let me continue. Number 3 is set boundaries. Set boundaries with our sons. Oftentimes, mothers, I feel, are too soft on their sons. They want to coddle their sons. Maybe because of today's society is a little rough from our aspect on our boys. They're a little rough. They out here getting killed one by one another. They're joining gangs and things of that nature. We're going to speak to that later, but they're joining gangs and cliques and getting into the street life, and police killing them, and then Lord knows who else is set up against it. What else is set up against us? So we coddle our young men. And to be honest, you're crippling them. You're crippling them. You set boundaries for them, though. You set boundaries for them. You let them know where they can and or cannot go without crippling them, without stifling their growth, without putting a fear in them for certain things. You set boundaries in order for them to understand that, one, respect themselves. But biggest thing is to respect you and the individuals around you and the individuals around them as well. Number 4, if you all have been following, you've heard me speak on school. Not school, but school. SKUW. Self-knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Well, I'm speaking to the young boys today. And it's going to take quite some time before they reach a level of wisdom. So right now we're going to shorten school. Just SKU. Self-knowledge and understanding. It's imperative that we give them a strong we'll speak to that later. We give them a strong sense of themselves. We teach them to dive deep into gaining a knowledge of themselves, an understanding of themselves. And what I mean is, and it's going to take a long time, because who knows, as we grow, our minds change so much. There's so many different things that come into our lives, that come into play, that changes who we are as we mature, as young boys to men. So it's going to be different. But the thing is, teaching them to always search for that. To always search for that. I'm not overly religious. Of course, I believe in God. One thing that I read in the Bible that has never left me is, it is the glory of God to conceal a thing and the honor of kings to search out a matter. We have to truly teach them before they do any other searching for anything else. Their first and most important initiative should always be to search within. Who are you? Who do you want to be? And of course, those things are forever going to change and elevate as we mature. But it should always be that intention of searching for that. Self-knowledge and understanding. And as you get older and you understand who you are, you have a firm understanding of who you are, that's when that wisdom comes into play. Number 5, cultivate imagination by multiple experiences. When I have a very vivid imagination. I had things that I wanted to do when I was younger. Didn't know which avenues to take, because from my experience, the things that I wanted to do that wasn't necessarily done in our communities. When I was young, I love animals. I had a large affinity for animals. I wanted to film animals. I wanted to narrate wildlife, movies and whatever segments, whatever you call them. I wanted to do that when I was younger. Didn't know which avenues to take. Didn't have those experiences to take me there. Especially growing up in the city, it was a little harder. So we have to introduce our kids, but more so our son, more so with regards to the topic that I'm speaking on today. Introduce them to multiple experiences so they can truly start to figure out who they are. Because if not, then they're going to be pushed and forced in a square or in a box or in a bubble, given a short list of who you are, what you can become, compared to if we truly expand their horizons, show them as much as we could possibly show them. But in order to do that, we have to do that for ourselves. We have to expand our horizons in order to do that for our children, let alone our sons. Which brings me to my next topic. Set strong and powerful examples. Men, I'm talking to you. Set a strong and powerful example of what your son is. What your son is to become. What your son should be. What you truly want for him. You have to set an example. In order for you to expand his horizon again, you have to expand yours. You have to move from those four corners and those squares and those blocks that you are accustomed to and step outside of your comfort zone. When the moment that we step outside of our comfort zone, that's that very moment that we challenge ourselves to be harder, to be greater, to be explorers. And oftentimes, what we find on the other end or the back end of that is powerful. It's tough, it's rough, and it's a heavy load to carry. But we become stronger, rougher, and tougher than we ever could be or would be had we just stayed in that comfortable position. So set that example, set that tone, and be the man that you want him to grow into. Number 7, define the purpose. We have to truly teach our sons that one, he is given a life, not to just live it as he see fit. He's given a life with a purpose. It isn't up to you to define his purpose for him. It's up to you to teach him that he must define his purpose. He must find his purpose. He must search for that purpose. To the point where he almost loses his mind, and he must search for that purpose like no other. I can't find the words to express how great and grave it is important for us as men in general to find our purpose and to define our purpose. But that is something that is an absolute must for our young men if they are to grow into our future leaders. Number 8, assemble the team. Again, I'm speaking to the fathers, but also to the mothers, some of the single mothers. Assemble a team. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that a mother cannot raise her son and produce a great specimen. But you ought not do it yourself is what I'm saying. You ought not attempt to do it yourself. A mother can never teach a man how to be a man. You can teach him what you expect from a man. You can teach him certain things, but it's only so far that you can take him as a mother. It's up to a man to teach that boy how to become a man. So I challenge mothers, our single mothers. If you are a single mother, it's imperative that we do whatever we can possibly do, or you all do whatever you could possibly do for the father to be in that young man's life. And if for whatever reason that isn't possible, then we need to do the next best thing. Our brothers, our uncles, our grandfathers, friends, family members, church, whatever the case may be. We want to speak to church as well. Now, as a matter of fact, let's get to church right now, because I don't want to, when I say assemble the team, If you have men in church, positive, strong men, you need to enlist them as well. Oftentimes in church though, church falls into societal norms. That's why you have more women in churches than you do men, because church doesn't necessarily gravitate or feed into that in which makes a man. When you go to church, the only thing you hear is submission, 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 submission to the Lord, submission to the pastor, submission to the church and the rules and regulations. And as a young youth coming up, while we do need direction, we do need things done in decency and order. We do need order, or else there will be chaos. Constantly beating our young men into submission is detrimental to his growth. You create an experience, or we should create an experience inside of our churches where we are developing intellectual warriors, not just submissive, intellectual warriors. If you want to get more young men and older men to join churches, step outside of those church walls, step into the field, step into the ring, put your gloves on, put your dirty clothes on, take the suit off, get your hands dirty, step into the community. I'm not just talking about giving, bikes and toys and food away to show face. I'm talking to truly get dirty, down and dirty with these young men, to show them that you are a man, to show them that you have aspirations for them to be a man. And I ain't gonna harp too much on it. That's a conversation that we need to have though. Church and the duty that men should serve to our young men growing up. Because churches aren't gonna go anywhere. And they used to be the cornerstones and the pillars of our community. That's falling off, but we'll speak of that. Determine the goals. Once you give him his purpose and things of that nature, you determine goals. When you determine a goal, then you force yourself as well as your son to execute those goals. You set up certain boundaries or regulations and people around you for you all to acquire those goals. Set daily goals, daily missions, I like to call them. Set daily missions and monthly missions and yearly missions for your son to acquire those different things. And as he starts to acquire them, he gets more and more confident on those stages. And on those stages, he starts to perform. Set expectations. It's imperative that we set expectations for our sons, because if we don't have a great or high expectation for them, then we'll settle for anything. If they don't have a high expectation for themselves, then they'll settle for anything. They'll fall for anything and they'll go for anything, and that doesn't produce a hell of a man. It produces a weak man. We are looking to turn our boys into strong and powerful men, capable men. So you have to set expectations, high expectations. Do not set the bar low. Set the bar high and then cultivate an era and stipulations that he has to go through in order for him to reach those heights. Elevate to those heights. Create an era of time that he goes through, rigorous training that he goes through to get to that level. Monitor. Number 11 is monitor and review. As he's going through those eras, as he's going through those time spurts, as he's going through those growth spurts, you have to constantly remain vigilant of what he's doing. Critical thinking is what we want to teach them. But in order for us to truly teach them critical thinking, we have to be critical of the things that they do. We have to critique any and everything that they do. And it's not to the point of making them feel bad about themselves, but it's letting them understand that you're always going to be under the gaze or view of somebody. And it's not for you to seek the approval of the individuals that see you and see what you're doing. It's for you to understand that somebody's always watching, so you want to put on your best performance at all time. And even if you fall short or make mistakes, that's okay, because you've cultivated enough through I'm on 11, through the first 10 processes, that you understand how to handle yourself in those moments. You understand when you do fall short, that it's okay. You dust yourself off and get back up and create what you want for yourselves. But it starts with family members doing that and teaching that, inspiring that in our young men. Number 12, celebrate and reward. When we put our young men through these different courses of actions, when we put them through it, don't just nod your head, give a swift pound and send them on their way as if it ain't nothing to it but to do it, and you supposed to do it anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Always make it a big deal when they reach those milestones. Celebrate our young men when they reach those levels that we put out for them, those expectations that we set out for them. They've been able to understand and interpret those boundaries that we set for them, and they stepped into it with a firm understanding of where it is I need to be based on these boundaries. When they've reached, again, those milestones that we've set forth, celebrate them and reward them for it. Let them know, job well done. I'm proud of you, son. I'm happy for the young man that you're growing into, and I'm excited to see where you will go and how far you can take us. And all 12 of those PowerPoints brought me to this one point and takeaway. We have to develop the warrior king. It's imperative that we develop a warrior king. I have no care in the world if you desire for your son to never touch a football, a basketball, or step in the ring, whether he's doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai or boxing. I have no care in the world for that. To each his own. But you should still develop a warrior. I have no care if you don't want your son to take on those things as a career as he grows up. But you should still want to cultivate a warrior in your young man. A warrior's mentality alongside and parallel to a king's mentality. Oftentimes you hear on media outlets and things of that nature from our black women that black women are unprotected. We need our black men to step up and be greater examples in our communities. We can never truly reach that in its entirety if we don't develop warriors, if we don't develop king mentality. It's about the mentality. They don't physically have to go out there and be warriors, though I would argue that they should be. They should be able to grow up rough and tough and tumble, struggle, gain scars, earn their scars, not stripes. Earn their scars, wear them proudly. We need to develop warriors. Even more so, we need to develop kings. Chime in and comment. Trying to keep it short. Comment on this topic because I truly want us, especially men and women, but especially men, I want us to engage in a manner that we start to show our youth that we truly do, our young black men, we truly do care about you. We truly do care about the things that happens to you. We want better for you. It is better for you. And these are the examples that we put forth. With that being said, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, like and subscribe. Black Ops Bandog TV. Holla at me.